morning mist clung to Mist Hollow like a burial shroud, thick enough to taste. Airless stood at the center of the village square with her wrists bound in front of her, the coarse rope already rubbing her skin raw. Around her, faces she had known for 3 years twisted with fear and righteous fury. "Witch!" someone hissed from the crowd. "Child stealer!" another spat. Airless kept her eyes fixed on the weathered stones beneath her feet, counting her breaths. Behind her, she could feel Ren's small body trembling, the child's fingers clutching the back of her threadbare dress. "It's all right," Airless murmured without turning. "Stay close to me." "I'm scared," Ren whispered. "I know, little one. I know." Alpha Aldrich circled the wooden platform that served as Mist Hollow's judgment seat, his boots striking the planks with deliberate menace. Even after 3 years, the sight of him made Erlis's stomach clench. The same cold, gray eyes, the same cruel smile. The same man who had dragged her to the pack border and told her she was worthless, defective, and unfit to breathe the same air as true wolves. "For 3 years, we tolerated your presence at our borders," Aldrich announced, his voice carrying across the silent square. "We showed mercy to a broken Omega. And how do you repay us?" He paused, letting the question hang. "By stealing our children." "I never stole anyone," Airless said quietly. Silence. Aldrich's hand cracked across her face, snapping her head to the side. The crowd murmured its approval. 6 pups in 8 months, 6 children drawn from their homes in the night, all found in your hovel. "You deny this?" Airless tasted blood where her teeth had cut her cheek. "They came to me," she said. "I never called them. I never lured them. They were lost, and they found me." "Lies." Aldrich gestured broadly to the crowd. "She uses dark magic to bewitch our young. I say we end this threat today." The roar of agreement made Airless flinch. She had always known this day would come, known that her quiet existence at the edge of pack territory was borrowed time, but she had hoped, foolishly, that she might have longer. Long enough to see Ren grow. Long enough to find somewhere truly safe. "The sentence for witchcraft is death," Aldrich continued, producing a curved blade from his belt. The metal gleamed dully in the gray light. "Unless anyone here wishes to speak in her defense." Silence. Airless hadn't expected otherwise. She closed her eyes, reaching back to squeeze Ren's fingers one last time. Then the thunder came, not from the sky, but from the northern road. Hoofbeats, dozens of them, pounding the frozen earth with enough force to shake the square. Airless's eyes flew open as riders emerged from the mist like wraiths, their horses massive and black, and their armor bearing a crest that made her breath catch. A silver wolf beneath a crescent moon, the mark of the Ironhold sovereignty, the Alpha King's men. The crowd scattered, pressing back against the buildings as the riders encircled the square. Aldrich had gone pale, his blade suddenly forgotten at his side. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded, though his voice had lost its authority. "This is Thornvale territory. You have no jurisdiction." "I have jurisdiction everywhere." The voice came from the largest rider, who dismounted with fluid grace that belied his size. He stood a full head taller than any man in the square, broad across the shoulders, with dark hair pulled back from a face that looked carved from stone. A scar traced from his left temple to his jaw, white against sun-darkened skin. But it was his eyes that stopped Airless's breath. Amber, bright and burning, with an intensity that seemed to see through flesh to the soul beneath. Every wolf in the square dropped to their knees. Every wolf except Airless, still bound and bleeding on the platform, and Ren, who pressed closer to her back. "Alpha King Kalen," Aldrich stammered, executing an awkward bow. We were not expecting, that is, we had no word of your coming. Clearly. Kalen's gaze swept the square, taking in the bound woman, the cowering child, the bloodthirsty crowd. When his eyes met Airless's, she felt something jolt through her chest. Recognition, though they had never met. A pull, as if something inside her was straining toward him. I've been tracking reports for months, Kalen said, his voice low and dangerous. Pups vanishing across 6 territories. The trail led here. He stepped closer to the platform, close enough that Airless could see the flecks of gold in his burning gaze. I expected to find a monster. Airless lifted her chin, refusing to cower. And what do you find instead? Something flickered across his expression. Surprise, perhaps, or interest. That remains to be seen. He turned to Aldrich. This woman is now in my custody. I will conduct my own investigation. But the sentence has already been... Did I ask for your opinion? Kalen didn't raise his voice, but Aldrich stumbled backward as if struck. My men will take the children she allegedly stole. We will examine the evidence. If she is guilty, she will face the king's justice, not a mob with torches. He gestured, and 2 of his warriors moved to cut Airless's bonds. The moment the rope fell away, Wren darted around and threw herself into Airless's arms. Don't let them take me away, Wren begged. Please, I want to stay with you. Hush, little one. Airless held her close, painfully aware of Kalen's eyes on them. I won't let anyone separate us. You speak for a child not your own with such certainty, Kalen observed. Why does she cling to you? Airless met his gaze steadily. Because I'm the only one who ever protected her. For a long moment, the Alpha King simply looked at her. The hostility in his expression had shifted to something more complex, something she couldn't read. Bring them both, he said finally, and the other children as well. As the king's warriors escorted her from the platform, Airless glanced back at Aldrich. The Alpha's face was mottled with fury, but beneath the anger, she saw something else. Fear. Whatever she had stumbled into, it was far larger than a village accusation. And the Alpha King, with his wolf-bright eyes and unreadable face, held her fate in his hands. The king's camp sprawled across a clearing 1/2 mile from Mist Hollow, a temporary city of dark tents and patrolling warriors. Airless had expected a dungeon cell, chains, perhaps immediate interrogation. Instead, she found herself in a surprisingly spacious tent with a small brazier for warmth and actual furs spread across the ground. Wren had fallen asleep within minutes, exhausted by fear, curled in a tight ball on the makeshift bed. The other children, 3 boys and 2 girls ranging from 5 to 11, huddled together nearby. They had refused to be separated from Airless despite the warriors' attempts to house them elsewhere. They can barely stand to be across the tent from you, observed a dry voice from the entrance. Airless turned to find an older woman with iron-gray hair and sharp eyes studying her. I'm Marin, the woman said, the king's physician. He asked me to tend your wounds. I'm fine. You're bleeding from your mouth. Your wrists are raw, and you're favoring your left side where someone likely kicked you. Marin crossed to her side with brisk efficiency. Sit down before you fall down. Airless sat. As Marin cleaned the cut on her cheek, Airless found her thoughts drifting to the Alpha King, the way he had looked at her. The strange pull she had felt. Why is he really here? Airless asked quietly. Surely the Alpha King doesn't personally investigate missing children. Marin's hands paused briefly. These aren't ordinary disappearances. The pups who went missing weren't just from common families. 3 were born to high-ranking bloodlines. 1 was nephew to the Eastern Alpha. Another was daughter to Kalen's own war general. Airless's blood chilled. I didn't take them. I swear on my life. I didn't. I believe you, Marin resumed her work. I've seen child stealers. They don't look at children the way you do. She nodded toward the sleeping pups. They don't look at anyone the way you do. Before Airless could ask what that meant, the tent flap opened again. Kalen entered, his presence immediately filling the space. Marin bowed and retreated, leaving them alone. Airless rose to her feet, ignoring the protest of her bruised ribs. Have you come to interrogate me? I've come to understand. He moved closer, his golden gaze sweeping over the sleeping children before settling on her face. Tell me how they found you. I don't know. It was the truth, and she was tired of being disbelieved. The first one appeared at my door in the middle of winter. A boy, barely 4 years old, half frozen and crying for his mother. I warmed him, fed him, and in the morning, I carried him back to the village. 2 weeks. Later, another came, then another. From different packs, different territories, some from hundreds of miles away. Kalen's eyes narrowed. And they all just happened to find their way to your door? Yes. You expect me to believe that? Airless felt her temper flare. I expect nothing from you. I've learned not to expect anything from alphas. She saw his jaw tighten but pressed on. I didn't call them. I didn't lure them. They simply came, and I couldn't turn them away. Would you have preferred I let them die in the cold? Something shifted in his expression. You were cast out. Rejected by your own pack. Most wolves in your position would be bitter, broken, yet you shelter the lost without thought for yourself. Someone has to. He studied her for a long moment. What are you, Airless of Mist Hollow? The question cut deeper than he could know. Defective, Aldrich had called her. Broken. Worthless. She had spent 3 years asking herself the same question and finding no answer. I'm no one, she said quietly. Just an omega who can't shift. His eyes flickered with something she couldn't name. Before he could respond, a small voice interrupted them. Airless? The youngest of the boys sat up on the furs, his face flushed and his eyes glassy. I don't feel good. Airless was at his side instantly, pressing her palm to his forehead, burning hot. How long have you felt ill, little one? Since the men put us on the horses. My head hurts. Road fever, perhaps? Or the shock of upheaval? Airless gathered him into her lap, rocking gently. Shh. It's all right. I'm here. But the boy whimpered, his small body trembling. His temperature was climbing too fast. This wasn't normal. Something's wrong, Airless breathed. He's burning up too quickly. Kalen moved toward the tent entrance. I'll summon Marin. There's no time. The words escaped before she could stop them. The boy's breathing was growing shallow, his lips taking on a bluish tinge. Whatever this was, it was killing him. Without thinking, Airless closed her eyes and reached for the place inside herself she had kept locked away since childhood. The warmth bloomed in her chest, spreading down her arms to her hands. When she opened her eyes, soft golden light was emanating from her palms, flowing into the boy's fevered body. She felt the sickness, dark and tangled, and gently began to unravel it. The poison, for that's what it was, some kind of poison, resisted for a moment before dissolving beneath her light. The boy's breathing eased, his color returned. Within moments, he was sleeping peacefully, the fever broken. Only then did Airless remember she wasn't alone. She looked up to find Kalen frozen at the tent entrance, his eyes like molten fire fixed on her glowing hands with an expression that made her heart stop. He had seen everything. The light faded from Airless's hands, leaving her trembling with exhaustion and terror. Please. The word came out broken. Please, don't tell anyone. I've never used it to harm. I swear, I only... Stop. Kalen's voice was barely above a whisper. He moved toward her slowly, as if approaching a wild creature that might bolt. Do you know what that was? What you just did? Witchcraft. Airless's voice cracked. That's what they called it. Why my pack really cast me out. Not because I couldn't shift, but because of this. She stared at her hands. I'm an abomination. No. The word was fierce, startling her into looking up. Kalen knelt before her, bringing his face level with hers. This close, she could see the amber of his eyes wasn't solid, but shifting, like fire beneath glass. What you have isn't witchcraft, it's the old gift, the light of the first wolves. Airless shook her head in confusion. I don't understand. Centuries ago, before the packs divided, our kind possessed abilities beyond shifting, healing, sight, the power to call to lost souls and guide them home. His gaze was intent on her face. Those gifts faded generations ago. We thought they were gone forever. But I can't even shift. How could I possibly? Show me your hands. The command was quiet but absolute. Airless hesitated, then slowly extended her palms. Kalen took them in his own, and the moment their skin touched, heat shot through her like lightning. She gasped. He went utterly still. You feel that? He breathed. It wasn't a question. Airless couldn't speak. Where his fingers wrapped around hers, her skin felt alive, electric. Every nerve ending sang with awareness. She could feel her heartbeat in her throat, her chest, and the palms he held. What is this? She managed. Kalen didn't answer immediately. He was staring at their joined hands with an expression caught between wonder and dread. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. You're coming with me, to Ironhold. As your prisoner? His eyes met hers. As my guest, under my protection. He released her hands carefully, as if the contact had cost him something. The power you carry is beyond valuable. If word spread of what you can do, you'd have every alpha in the realm hunting you. Some to use you, others to destroy you. And you? Airless asked quietly. What do you want from me? Something flickered in his gaze. I don't know yet. He left her then, ducking through the tent flap into the night. Airless sat motionless, her heart still racing, her hands still tingling where he had touched them. Around her, the children slept peacefully. Even the youngest boy, the one called Bram, nearly dead an hour ago, breathed with easy rhythm. She had healed him, and in doing so, she had revealed her darkest secret to the most powerful wolf in the realm. Sleep was impossible. Airless lay awake, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the camp. Guards changing shifts, horses stamping, and the distant howl of wolves on patrol. She must have dozed eventually, because she woke to voices outside her tent. Kalen's voice, low and tense, and another man, his tone, urgent. Can't be what you're suggesting. She's human-blooded at best. The bond doesn't work that way. I know what I felt. Kalen's response was clipped. My king, with respect, you've been without a mate for 30 years. Perhaps your wolf is simply... Do not presume to tell me what my wolf is doing. A pause, heavy with unspoken tension. I need answers, Brennan. Discreetly. Search the old texts. Find me anything about the old gifts and their connections. As you command. Footsteps retreated. Airless lay frozen, barely breathing. Bond. He had said bond. What did that mean? A thin cry pierced her thoughts. Across the tent, little Wren was thrashing in her sleep, caught in some nightmare. Airless pushed herself up and went to her, gathering the child close. Shh, little bird. I'm here. You're safe. The dark wolves, Wren whimpered. They were chasing me. They wanted to eat me up. No one's going to hurt you. I promise. The tent flap moved, and suddenly Kalen was there, filling the entrance. His eyes swept the space, alert for threat, before landing on Airless with the crying child in her arms. She has nightmares, Airless said quietly. Nearly every night since she came to me. Kalen entered slowly. In the dim light of the dying brazier, he seemed less like a king and more like what he was, a wolf, drawn by the distress of a pup. He knelt beside them, his presence somehow both overwhelming and oddly comforting. Wren's cries softened. She blinked up at the Alpha King with tear-wet eyes. "You're the Wolf King," she said tremulously. "Are you going to take Airless away from me?" Something in Kalen's hard expression gentled. "No, little one, I'm going to keep you both safe." "Promise?" He glanced at Airless over the child's head. In the half-darkness, his eyes seemed to glow. "Promise," he said. Wren settled between them, her small hand clutching Airless's sleeve, her breathing gradually evening into sleep. The tent fell silent except for the crackle of embers. Airless should have looked away, should have maintained proper distance from this dangerous, powerful male who held her life in his hands, but something kept her gaze locked on his. Kalen reached out. His fingers brushed her cheek where Aldrich had struck her. Feather-light, barely a touch at all. But Airless felt it like a brand. His eyes flared gold. A sound rumbled from his chest, something between a growl and a groan. Not threatening. Something else entirely. Something that made heat pool low in her belly and her breath catch in her throat. Then he jerked backward as if burned, rising to his feet so quickly that Wren stirred. "Forgive me." His voice was hoarse. "I shouldn't have. I need to go." He was gone before Airless could speak, leaving her alone with a sleeping child and a racing heart. She pressed her fingers to her cheek where he had touched her. The skin was warm. And beneath it, something pulsed. Something that felt like awakening. The camp broke at dawn. Airless found herself mounted on a gray mare, Wren seated in front of her, surrounded by the king's warriors. The other children rode in a covered wagon, tended by Marin and her assistants. Kalen had not spoken to her since the night before. He rode at the head of the column, his back rigid, never once glancing her way. But Airless could feel him. That was the strangest part. Like a thread had been woven between them, invisible, but undeniable. When he moved, something in her chest shifted. When his mood darkened, she felt shadows at the edges of her own mind. "You're staring," Wren observed. Airless tore her gaze away. "I was just thinking." "About the Wolf King?" Wren's voice held a child's knowing innocence. "He stares at you too, when you're not looking." Heat crept up Airless's neck. "Hush, little bird." They rode for hours through increasingly wild terrain. The cultivated fields of the lowlands gave way to dense forest, then to rocky highland passes where the wind cut like knives. By midday, Airless was shivering despite the furs wrapped around her shoulders. Then Kalen raised his hand, and the column halted. "What's wrong?" Airless asked the warrior beside her. His face was grim. "Ambush territory. Stay close." The attack came without warning. Wolves exploded from the tree line, not in human form but fully shifted, their pelts ranging from muddy brown to mottled gray. They were smaller than Airless had expected, leaner, with a feral hunger in their yellow eyes. "Rogues!" someone shouted. "Protect the children!" The king's warriors shifted mid-stride, their transformations fluid and beautiful despite the chaos. Where men had stood, massive wolves now fought, silver and black and deep russet, clashing with the rogues in a blur of teeth and claws. But there were too many. For every rogue that fell, two more emerged from the forest. Airless's mare reared, screaming. Wren cried out, and Airless barely managed to keep them both mounted. A gray rogue lunged for them, jaws snapping, and Airless kicked out desperately, catching the beast in the snout. Then he was there. Kalen in wolf form was nothing like the rogues. He was enormous, easily twice their size, with fur black as midnight and eyes blazing molten gold. He tore through the attackers like they were made of paper, his movements savage and precise. A rogue slipped past his guard, racing toward Airless and Wren. Time slowed. Airless saw death coming, felt Wren's arms tighten around her waist, and heard her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. No. The word blazed through her mind, and with it came the light. But this time it wasn't gentle healing warmth. This was fire, pure and blinding, erupting from her palms in a wave that struck the rogue mid-leap. The wolf shrieked, a sound of agony and terror, and fled into the forest with smoke rising from its singed fur. The remaining rogues scattered. Silence fell, broken only by harsh breathing and the groans of the wounded. Airless sat frozen, staring at her hands. They were glowing so brightly that she couldn't look directly at them. Kalen shifted back to human form, striding toward her through the carnage. His chest was heaving, scratches and bite marks already healing on his bare skin. But his eyes were fixed on her with an intensity that made her stomach drop. What was that? His voice was hoarse. I don't know. Airless's hands trembled. It's never done that before. It's always been gentle. For healing. You called the light as a weapon. He was close now, close enough to touch. The old gift has many faces. Healing, sight, the call that draws the lost home. But there are legends of a rarer form, one we thought was myth. His amber eyes searched her face with something like awe. Battle light. The warrior aspect of the first wolves' blessing. It was said to manifest only when the gifted one's heart was desperate to protect. Airless looked at her still trembling hands. She had been desperate to save Wren, to survive, to keep the small life pressed against her safe. Something's happening, Airless whispered. Between us. I can feel it. The bond. The words seemed to escape him against his will. My wolf recognizes you, has recognized you since the moment I saw you in that square. Recognizes me as what? He didn't answer. His gaze dropped to her throat, and Airless saw his jaw clench, saw the struggle playing out across his features. One of his hands rose, trembling to brush the curve of her neck. A growl rumbled from his chest. Not threatening, possessive. Kalen. She said his name without thinking, and the sound of it on her lips made something in him snap. He pulled her against him, burying his face in her hair, breathing her in as if she were air itself. Airless should have been afraid, should have pushed away. Instead, she melted into him, her body recognizing what her mind couldn't yet accept. Mine, he breathed against her throat. Then his teeth grazed her skin, right where her neck met her shoulder, and Airless felt herself falling into sensation. When he bit down, the world exploded. Pain and pleasure merged into something transcendent. She was dimly aware of crying out, of her fingers digging into his shoulders, of his arms crushing her against his chest. But mostly, she was aware of him, his essence pouring into her through the bite, his emotions flooding her mind, desperate longing, fierce protectiveness, and beneath it all, a love so profound it brought tears to her eyes. She saw flashes of his life. A boy crowned too young, a kingdom built through blood and sacrifice, 30 years of searching for something he couldn't name. And now, finally, here in his arms, the answer. When he released her, they were both gasping. What did you do? Airless touched her throat. She could feel the wound, but it didn't hurt. It pulsed with warmth, with connection. Kalen's face was ashen. I claimed you. His voice broke. Forgive me. I couldn't stop. My wolf. I've never lost control like that. The bond, Airless said slowly, understanding dawning. This is what you meant. You're my mate. He said it like a confession, like a prayer, like a death sentence. The one my wolf has waited 30 years for. And I've just bound you to me without your consent. Airless should have been furious, should have felt violated, trapped, used. But as she searched inside herself, all she found was a strange peace. The loneliness that had haunted her entire life was gone. In its place was warmth, connection, belonging. Show me, she whispered. Show me what it means. The journey to Ironhold became a blur of intimate glances and careful distance. Kalen's warriors had witnessed the claiming. Word would spread through the realm like wildfire. The Alpha King had taken a mate, an Omega, a wolf who couldn't shift. Airless felt their stares but couldn't bring herself to care. The bond hummed constantly in her chest, a warm presence that made even the bitter mountain cold feel bearable. She could sense Kalen's emotions now. His guilt over claiming her without permission, his fierce determination to protect her, and beneath it all, a tenderness that made her heart ache. He loves you, Ren announced on the third day, as if stating obvious fact. The Wolf King. He looks at you like Papa used to look at Mama before the sickness took them. Airless pulled the child closer. How do you remember that? You were so young. I remember everything. Ren's voice was matter of fact. That's why I found you, you know? I could feel you calling, even from far away, like a candle in the dark. Before Airless could pursue that unsettling statement, the column crested a ridge, and Ironhold spread before them. The fortress city defied description. Built into the living rock of a mountain, its spires stretched toward the clouds while its foundations plunged into valleys so deep they seemed bottomless. Waterfalls cascaded down its walls, turning to mist in the wind. Banners bearing the silver wolf flew from every tower. Home, Kalen said, appearing at her side. It was the first word he had spoken to her directly since the claiming. It's beautiful. It's yours now. His voice was quiet. Everything I have, everything I am, the bond makes it so. Airless turned to face him. You say that like it's a burden. For you, it may be. Pain flickered in his amber eyes. I've bound you to a king, Airless, to a throne, to a war, to enemies you can't yet imagine. You didn't choose this. Did you? The question seemed to catch him off guard. What? Did you choose this? The bond, the claiming? Did you want it? He was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he reached out and cupped her face in his palm. His thumb traced her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. I have wanted nothing else since the moment I saw you. The words hung between them, raw and true. Airless leaned into his touch, and through the bond she felt his surprise, his hope, his terrified joy. Then stop apologizing, she said, and start teaching me how to be a queen. They entered Ironhold as the sun began to set, casting the fortress in shades of gold and amber. The streets were lined with wolves who had come to see their king's new mate. Some cheered. Others stared with open suspicion. Airless kept her chin high and her hand in Kalen's grip. The throne room was carved from a single piece of black stone, its walls etched with the history of the wolf clans. Here, Kalen's council waited. 7 alphas representing the allied territories, their faces ranging from curious to hostile. My king. A silver-haired alpha stepped forward. Word reached us of your claiming. Is it true you've bonded with an Omega, one who cannot even shift? It is true. Kalen's voice carried through the hall like thunder. Airless is my mate, chosen by fate and sealed by bond. You will treat her with the respect due a queen. Murmurs rippled through the council. A younger alpha, dark-haired with cruel eyes, laughed openly. Forgive me, my king, but surely you cannot expect us to accept this. She's defective, broken. The bloodlines will be strengthened. Kalen's interruption was soft, dangerous. She carries the old gift, healing magic, battle light, powers we thought lost forever. Silence fell. The alphas exchanged glances of shock, disbelief, greed. Impossible, the silver-haired alpha breathed. I witnessed it myself. Kalen gestured to his captain. As did my warriors. She destroyed a rogue with nothing but light from her hands. A new voice cut through the tension. Then she must be studied, examined. Such power cannot be left uncontrolled. Ice flooded Airless's veins. Aldrich stepped from the shadows at the far end of the hall, his gray eyes glittering with malice. What is he doing here? Her voice came out stronger than she felt. Alpha Aldrich invoked the right of grievance, the silver-haired alpha explained, his tone carefully neutral. Any territorial alpha may petition the king directly when subjects are taken from his lands. He arrived yesterday with formal accusations that you stole children from his territory and used dark magic to bewitch them. Of course he did, Airless thought bitterly. Aldrich had always known the old laws better than anyone. He'd used them to cast her out, and now he was using them to follow her here. Lies. Kalen moved in front of Airless, his body a shield. I've investigated his claims myself. The children were drawn to her gift, not stolen. She protected them when his pack would have let them die. Pretty words from a man bewitched. Aldrich smiled, and Airless saw the trap closing. The bond was forced, was it not? She used her magic to ensnare you, just as she ensnared the pups. That's not true. Then prove it. Aldrich spread his hands. Submit to examination by the council's seers. Let them verify your gift is pure and not dark sorcery. Airless felt Kalen's fury through the bond, felt him preparing to refuse, to fight. But she also saw the council's faces, saw the doubt Aldrich had planted taking root. I'll do it. The words escaped before she could stop them. Kalen spun to face her. Airless, no. You don't have to. If I refuse, they'll always wonder. She met his eyes, willing him to understand. Let them see. Let them know what I am. The examination was set for the following dawn. That night, Airless barely slept, pacing the chambers Kalen had given her, trying to calm the fear that clawed at her chest. Near midnight, her door opened without a knock. Kalen stood in the entrance, his face drawn with worry. You should rest, he said. So should you. He crossed to her, pulling her into his arms without hesitation. Airless went willingly, pressing her face to his chest, breathing in his scent of pine and rain. I won't let them hurt you, he murmured against her hair. Whatever happens tomorrow, I'll protect you. I know. They stood that way for a long moment, wrapped in each other, drawing strength from the bond that pulsed between them. When Kalen finally pulled back, his eyes were bright with emotion. Sleep now, he said. I'll stay until you do. Airless lay down, and true to his word, he sat beside her, his hand covering hers, his presence a comfort in the dark. As she drifted toward sleep, she heard him whisper something in the old tongue, words that sounded like prayer and promise intertwined. She dreamed of wolves howling and fire falling from the sky. And beneath it all, the steady beat of two hearts. bound together against the coming storm. The examination chamber lay deep beneath the fortress, carved from stone so ancient it seemed to breathe. Airless stood in the center of a ritual circle, surrounded by 7 hooded seers whose eyes gleamed silver in the torchlight. Kaelin had been forbidden to enter. She could feel his distress through the bond, a constant pressure against her ribs, but she forced herself to breathe. "We will see your truth, child." The eldest seer's voice echoed strangely. "Light or dark, gift or curse, nothing can be hidden from the sight." They began to chant. The magic hit Airless like a wave, cold and probing, pushing into her mind without permission. She gasped as memories surfaced, her childhood in the pack, the first time she healed a wounded bird, the night Aldrich dragged her to the border and threw her into exile. "She has known pain," one seer intoned, "rejection, cruelty." Yet she did not become cruel. Another voice, younger. She protected, healed, sheltered the lost. The probing deepened, reaching for the core of her power. Airless cried out as the old gift surged in response, meeting the seer's magic with light that blazed through the chamber. "There," the eldest seer breathed. "There it is, the blessing of the first wolves." The chanting changed, rising in pitch, and suddenly Airless saw visions that weren't her own. A woman with her face standing on a battlefield, light pouring from her palms, wolves rallying behind her, cities burning, children screaming, and through it all, a prophecy spoken in voices like thunder: "When the lost are gathered home, and the gifted claims the throne, light and shadow both shall rise, to meet the darkness in the skies." The vision shattered. Airless fell to her knees, gasping as the seers stumbled backward. "What did you see?" The eldest seer's voice was shaking. "What was that prophecy?" "I don't know." Airless's entire body trembled. "I've never seen that before." "It came from you." The seer approached, pushing back her hood to reveal a face lined with age and wonder. "Or rather, from what sleeps inside you. Child, do you understand what you are?" Airless shook her head. "You are not merely gifted. You are the gifted. The one our people have waited for since the old ways were lost." The seer knelt before her, actually knelt, and the others followed. "The prophecy spoke of you centuries ago. A healer who cannot shift but carries the light of all wolves. The one who will gather the lost and stand against the coming darkness." "No." Airless scrambled backward. "No, I'm just an Omega. I can't be—" The chamber doors burst open. Kaelin strode in, his face wild with worry, ignoring the protests of the guards. His eyes found Airless immediately, scanning her for injury. "She passed," the eldest seer said before he could speak. "More than passed. She is the one from the prophecy, my king. Your mate will save us all, or doom us." The news spread through Ironhold like wildfire. Within hours, wolves who had sneered at the Omega Queen were bowing in the streets. But Airless found no comfort in their reverence. The prophecy's words echoed in her mind. "Light and shadow, both shall rise." "What does it mean?" she asked Kaelin that evening, pacing their shared chambers. "What darkness is coming?" "I don't know." He caught her hands, stilling her movement. "But whatever it is, we'll face it together." A knock interrupted them. Brennan, Kaelin's captain, entered with a grim expression. "My king, we've received word from the eastern border. 3 villages destroyed in the night. No survivors except the children, who were found wandering alone, unable to speak of what they witnessed." Airless's stomach turned. "The children were left alive? Why?" "We don't know. But there's more." Brennan hesitated. "The survivors are being brought here. When they heard where they were going, They all said the same thing. What? They want to see the Lady of Light. They say she called them home. The children arrived 3 days later, 17 of them, ranging from toddlers to adolescents, their eyes haunted but dry. The moment they entered Ironhold, they made their way to Airless as if drawn by invisible strings. "You're here," a small boy whispered, clutching her skirt. "We heard you calling. Even when the Shadow Wolves came, we heard you." "Shadow Wolves?" Airless knelt to his level. "What do you mean, little one? The Dark Ones. They killed everyone except us. They said we were marked, that we belonged to the Lady of Light, and they couldn't touch us." Airless exchanged a horrified glance with Kaylin. Someone was orchestrating this. Someone who knew about her gift, about the lost children who found their way to her. It's Aldrich. The certainty struck her like a blow. He's behind this. He was always behind it. But why? Kaylin's voice was tight with controlled fury. What does he gain from killing villages and leaving children alive? The answer came to Airless with sickening clarity. Me. He's drawing me out. Every orphaned pup is a thread he's tying to me, making me responsible, making me come to them. She looked at the children surrounding her, their trusting faces, their small hands reaching for her warmth. He's building an army of hostages. That night, Airless woke to agony. Pain ripped through her body, centering on the claiming mark at her throat. She tried to scream, but couldn't draw breath. Her bones felt like they were splintering, her muscles tearing, her very soul being wrenched in two. Airless! Kaylin was there, gathering her in his arms, his voice raw with terror. "What's happening? Airless, talk to me." But she couldn't speak, couldn't think, and couldn't do anything but burn. Through the haze of torment, she felt something shifting inside her. Something that had been dormant her entire life, caged and sleeping, finally stirring awake. Her wolf? The realization struck her as another wave of pain crashed through her system. She was shifting. After 26 years of being defective, broken, unable to become what her people were meant to be, her wolf was finally trying to emerge. And it was killing her. The pain lasted 3 days. Airless drifted between consciousness and darkness, her body racked with spasms as her wolf fought to break free. Marin and the seers worked tirelessly, brewing tinctures and casting stabilizing spells, but nothing seemed to help. "Her gift is fighting the transformation," Marin explained to Kaylin on the second night. "The healing light keeps trying to repair what the shift is breaking. They're at war inside her." "Then stop the healing." Kaylin's voice was ragged. He hadn't slept since it began, hadn't left her side except when physically dragged away. "Let the shift happen." "We can't." Marin's face was grave. The gift isn't something she controls. It's instinct, self-preservation. It won't stop trying to save her, even if saving her means killing her. Through the bond, Airless felt Kaylin's anguish like a second heartbeat. She wanted to comfort him, to tell him she was still fighting, but her voice wouldn't cooperate. All she could do was endure. On the third morning, the pain receded enough for her to open her eyes. Kaylin was beside her instantly, his face haggard and his eyes red-rimmed. "Airless, can you hear me?" "Yes." The word came out as a croak. "What happened?" "Your wolf tried to emerge," took her hand, pressing it to his lips. "But your gift fought back. You've been unconscious for 3 days." 3 days. Airless tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Every muscle screamed in protest. "The children," she managed. "The new ones. Are they safe?" "Ren has been caring for them." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "She's rather terrifying when she takes charge." Despite everything, Airless laughed. It turned into a cough, and Kaylin helped her drink from a cup of honeyed water. "There's something else." His expression darkened. While you were unconscious, we captured one of Aldrich's scouts. He talked. What did he say? Aldrich isn't working alone. He's allied with something called the Shadow Court, an ancient faction that wants to restore the old ways through blood and conquest. They believe your gift is the key to awakening something dark, something that's been sleeping since the first wolves walked. Airless felt a chill trace her spine. The prophecy. Light and shadow both shall rise. Yes. Kalen's jaw tightened. They want to use you, Airless. Your light can apparently unlock the shadow. Two sides of the same power, kept separate for millennia. And the children? Why leave them alive? Leverage. They knew you'd never abandon lost pups. Every child they orphan is another chain binding you to their game. Fury sparked in Airless's chest. Then we end it. We find Aldrich and we stop him. You can barely stand. Then help me stand. She gripped his arm, forcing herself upright through sheer will. Those children are my responsibility. I won't let them be used as weapons against me. Kalen stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he smiled, and it transformed his face from stern king to devoted mate. Have I mentioned that I love you? The words struck Airless like lightning. Through the bond, she felt the truth of them, the depth, and the permanence. He wasn't just saying it, he was offering everything he was. No, she whispered. You haven't. I love you. He cradled her face in his hands. I love your courage and your compassion. I love how the lost find their way to you. I love that you make me want to be worthy of you. Tears spilled down Airless's cheeks. I love you too. Even though you're infuriating and overprotective and... He kissed her. It was gentle at first, reverent, but quickly deepened into something more desperate. Airless pulled him closer, needing to feel him, to anchor herself in his warmth. Through the bond, their emotions merged until she couldn't tell where she ended and he began. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, a commotion erupted outside. Brennan burst through the door without knocking. My king. Aldrich's army is marching on Ironhold. They'll reach the gates by nightfall. Kalen was on his feet instantly, the tender lover replaced by the warrior king. How many? 3,000 at least, and something else. Brennan's face was pale. Shadow wolves. Dozens of them. Shadow wolves are legend, Kalen said sharply. They were legend. Brennan swallowed. They're not anymore. Airless forced herself to stand. Then I need to face them. Absolutely not. Kalen whirled on her. You're in no condition. The prophecy said I would stand against the darkness. She met his eyes steadily. Maybe this is what it meant. And maybe it means your death. Maybe. She touched his face, feeling the muscle clench beneath her palm. But those children didn't find their way to me by accident, Kalen. I was meant to protect them. I was meant to be here, with you, for this moment. The battle preparations consumed the afternoon. Airless watched from the high walls as Kalen's warriors assembled, their wolves magnificent in the dying light. The children had been moved to the deepest chambers, guarded by Marin and a contingent of the king's most trusted soldiers. Ren had refused to go. My place is with you, she insisted, her small chin set stubbornly. I'm not afraid. I know you're not, little bird. Airless knelt to meet her eyes. But I need you to do something important. If anything happens to me, you have to keep the other children calm. Can you do that? Ren's lip trembled, but she nodded. As the sun touched the horizon, Aldrich's army appeared at the edge of the valley. Even from this distance, Airless could see the wrongness of them. The shadow wolves moved like smoke given form, their eyes red embers in the gathering dark. Kalen appeared at her side in full battle armor, his expression carved from stone. "Whatever happens tonight," he said quietly, "know that finding you was the greatest gift of my life." "Don't talk like that." Airless gripped his hand. "We're both surviving this." His smile was sad. "I'll do everything in my power to make that true." The first howl split the night, and the battle began. The clash of armies shook the very stones of Ironhold. Airless stood on the battlements, her hands pressed to the ancient walls, feeling the vibration of thousands of wolves fighting for survival. Kalen led the charge himself, his black wolf form a shadow of death among the enemy ranks. Through the bond, Airless felt his fierce joy in combat, his determination, and beneath it all, his fear for her safety. But the shadow wolves were something else entirely. They moved through Kalen's warriors like water through sand, their forms shifting and reforming, impossible to kill. For every one that fell, it seemed to rise again, darkness stitching its wounds closed. "They're not truly alive," the eldest seer said, appearing at Airless's side. "They're constructs, animated by the shadow magic Aldrich has awakened. Your mate cannot defeat them with teeth and claws alone." "Then what will defeat them?" "Light." The seer's silver eyes met hers. "Your light. It's the only thing that can dispel the shadow permanently." Airless looked at her hands. Since her failed transformation, the gift had been unpredictable, surging and fading without warning. She didn't even know if she could summon it now. "I have to try." She moved toward the stairs leading down to the battlefield. "Wait." The seer caught her arm. "There's something you should know. Your wolf, the one that tried to emerge, she's still there. Still waiting." "I know, but she's killing me. My gift won't let her through." "Because you're fighting yourself." The seer's grip tightened. "Your gift isn't separate from your wolf, child. They're two halves of the same soul. The reason you couldn't shift before wasn't because you were broken. It was because your power was too great. It needed time to mature before your wolf could contain it." Understanding dawned slowly. "You mean?" "I mean if you stop fighting, if you let your wolf and your gift merge instead of war, you might become something this world has never seen. Or I might die." "Yes." The seer released her. "The choice is yours." Airless descended into chaos. The courtyard was a nightmare of blood and shadow, wolves locked in combat, the screams of the wounded piercing the air. She pushed through it all, following the bond toward Kalen, guided by the thread that connected their souls. She found him surrounded. 5 shadow wolves circled him, their red eyes burning with malevolent intelligence. Kalen was wounded, deep gashes across his flank weeping blood that looked black in the moonlight. He snapped at the nearest shadow, but his movements were slowing, his strength fading. "No." The scream tore from Airless's throat. The shadow wolves turned toward her, and in their eyes, she saw recognition, anticipation. "There you are." Aldrich's voice echoed across the courtyard as he emerged from the darkness in human form. "I knew you'd come eventually. The lost pups called to you. Now the lost king calls to you. You can't help yourself, can you? You have to save everyone." "Let him go." Airless's hands were shaking, but her voice held steady. "This is between us." "Oh, it's far bigger than us." Aldrich spread his arms. "The Shadow Court has waited millennia for someone like you. Your light is the key that unlocks the darkness. Together, they'll remake this world. I won't help you. You won't have a choice." He gestured, and the shadow wolves moved toward Kalen with lethal intent. Time stopped. Airless felt everything crystallize. Her love for Kalen, her devotion to the children who had found their way to her, her fury at Aldrich, and everything he represented. And beneath it all, She felt her wolf stirring, no longer fighting, but waiting, hoping. "Let me in," a voice whispered from the depths of her soul. "Let us be one." Airless closed her eyes and surrendered. The pain was beyond anything she had experienced. Her bones shattered and reformed. Her muscles tore and rebuilt themselves stronger. Her skin rippled with fur the color of starlight, silver white and luminous. But this time, her gift didn't fight. It flowed into the transformation, golden light threading through every cell, every fiber, until wolf and power merged into something new. When Airless opened her eyes, she saw the world differently, brighter, sharper. Every shadow had a weakness. Every enemy had a vulnerability. She howled, and the sound was a weapon. Light erupted from her in waves, pure and blinding, washing across the battlefield. Where it touched the shadow wolves, they dissolved like smoke in the sun, their unnatural existence no match for the radiance pouring from her transformed body. Aldrich screamed in fury, launching himself toward her, but Kaelin intercepted him. The two wolves clashed with savage intensity, blood and darkness spraying across the stones. Airless ran to help, her new form faster than thought, more powerful than anything she had imagined. But before she could reach them, Aldrich twisted free and plunged a blade of shadow into Kaelin's chest. The bond shattered. Airless felt it like her own death. Pain exploded through her, driving her to the ground as Kaelin collapsed, the darkness spreading from the wound through his veins. Finally! Aldrich stood over his fallen enemy, triumphant. "The king is dead. Now there's no one to protect you." But Airless barely heard him. She crawled toward Kaelin, her wolf form dissolving back into human as grief overwhelmed everything else. "No." She gathered him in her arms, pressing her hands to the wound. "No, please. Don't leave me." The shadow poison was spreading too fast, consuming him from the inside. Through the broken bond, she felt his life fading, felt him slipping away. "Airless." His voice was barely a whisper, his eyes dimming. "Run. Please." "I'm not leaving you." Tears streamed down her face. "I love you. I'm not letting you go." She reached for her gift, but it guttered weakly, exhausted from the transformation. There was nothing left. She had used everything. "Not everything," her wolf whispered. "There's one thing you haven't tried." The claiming mark on her throat pulsed with warmth. Understanding flooded through her. The bond wasn't broken. It was wounded, just like Kaelin, and just as he had claimed her, she could claim him back. Airless bent over his throat, finding the spot where neck met shoulder, and bit down with everything she had. Light exploded between them. She felt herself pouring into him, her essence, her gift, her very soul, flowing through the bond to meet the shadow. Where light touched darkness, the poison burned away. Where her love touched his fading spirit, it anchored him, pulled him back from the edge of death. "Mine," she thought fiercely, "you are mine, and I will not let you go." "Yours," came the response, weak but real. "Always yours." The bond reformed, stronger than before, two souls welded together so completely that nothing could ever separate them again. Kaelin's eyes snapped open, burning gold with renewed life. The wound on his chest closed as light and shadow fought, and light won. When he sat up, pulling Airless into his arms, she felt his heartbeat align with hers. Aldrich stared at them in disbelief. Impossible. The shadow blade never fails. Airless rose to her feet, Kaelin beside her, their hands intertwined. Light radiated from both of them now, the gift no longer hers alone but shared between mates. "Your shadow has no power here anymore," she said. "Leave, and never return." Aldrich's face twisted with rage. He lunged for them, darkness gathering in his hands, but Kaelin moved faster. One strike, precise and final, and Aldrich fell. The battle ended as if a spell had broken. Without Aldrich and his shadow wolves, the enemy army scattered, fleeing into the night. A ragged cheer rose from Kaelin's warriors, then another, until the sound of victory filled the valley. But Airless barely heard it. She turned into Kaelin's arms, burying her face in his chest, feeling his heartbeat against her cheek. "You saved me," he murmured against her hair. "We saved each other." When dawn broke over Ironhold, it found a world transformed. Airlie stood on the highest balcony of the fortress. The children gathered around her feet. Ren pressed against her side. Kaelin's arm wrapped around her waist. Below them, the pack howled their greeting to the sun, their voices rising in celebration of their king, their queen, and the miracle they had witnessed. "What happens now?" Ren asked, looking up at Airless with wondering eyes. "Now we rebuild." Airlie smiled, feeling the warmth of the bond humming in her chest. "We gather the lost, we protect the weak, and we make sure no pup ever feels alone again." "And the prophecy?" Kaelin asked quietly. "Light and shadow both shall rise?" Airless considered this, remembering the vision the seers had shown her. "The darkness will always exist, but so will the light. As long as we stand together, we can face whatever comes." Kaelin turned her to face him, his amber eyes soft with love. "Together then. Always." "Always," she agreed. When he kissed her, the children cheered, and somewhere in the depths of her soul, Airless's wolf howled with joy. She had spent her whole life being told she was broken, defective, and worthless. But the truth was something far more beautiful. She had never been broken. She had been waiting. Waiting for the loss to find her. Waiting for her power to bloom. Waiting for the mate whose soul matched her own. And now, surrounded by her pack, her children, her king, Airless finally understood what she was. She was home.